Dude, you always ask me to one take these like I'm not already planning on it because we're in double-digit episodes now. We're pros. The money's rolling in. The advertising dollars for the Gunncast.
We don't have any advertisers.
It would kind of be a little contradictory if we did, right?
You think?
I don't know. I guess as long as it didn't, as long as they weren't like, hey, you gotta quit talking about whatever, and we'll...
I always got confused about that because I didn't know that companies actually did that anymore. I think it's like an antiquated idea.
Well, I know here's a anecdotal piece of evidence, but I have a friend's band. I'm not going to shout them out, but you know who they are, and they just got signed to a label and put out a music video, and in the video, someone is setting their hand on fire. Obviously, it's not real, but YouTube demonetized the video because it shows self-harm. How stupid is that?
Huh.
I know you have first-hand experience with old YouTube. But
yeah. The strange thing about it is they seem to have a real agenda.
YouTube?
There's a real ideology, I think, behind them. Yeah.
What do you think it is?
I think it's really, well, it depends on what cup you put it in. If you ask where it is politically, it's definitely on the liberal side.
Yeah.
Which is all of Silicon Valley, so that's not surprising.
Well, it's owned by Google now, so.
Yeah. If you ask what it doesn't like, then that would be the other side. But its ideas are, it seems to champion the loudest ideas, not the most important ones. So you know when you hear about things on the news or whatever it might be, and you kind of wonder, and I don't know anyone like this, who's really talking about this, and then you go look at it, and it's 300 people in Idaho that are concerned about this issue, and it's really not an issue. But
right, but the news article makes it sound like
to be screaming.
Right.
Yeah. They tend to listen to those people, the loudest people, basically the loudest voices in the room, not necessarily the most prominent. I think that's the way the news is too. I think it harkens on really minority ideas, not minority in a sense of race, but minority as in tiny ideas that are just really loud. Some movements have, 40 people in their group, but by how loud and their media presence, you would swear they were huge, but they're not.
It's like YouTube's just trying to stay controversy-free, because if a loud group makes enough noise and then the media picks it up and runs with it, then it's just a bad look for them.
But when you start trying to please everyone, there's been some bad historical cases of that. Not to shout any of them out, and I've been. When I just said that point, I probably shouldn't have even said it because I can't give you any examples without seeming like I disagree or have something wrong with those groups or whatever they are. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I do, because they're just, when I say there's loud screaming groups, that's what they are. So who wouldn't have a problem with them fucking morons? You know what I mean? But on the other hand, it is a private company, right?
They can do what they want. They're not forced to like what you put on their site. I mean, Vimeo, from what I've seen, is a little more free-form, laissez-faire when it comes to what you can upload. But it's just not the most popular one, so...
You kind of have to weigh in at some point, I think. Or else you get these strange monopoly types of scenarios that everyone bitches about, right? I mean, there isn't a person around that really champions the model of the oil industry, right?
Right.
Yet they will with this, which is bigger. It's like it's okay if it's our thing, not their thing.
Yeah.
So.
Have any of the King videos been demonetized that you know of? Which, not that it matters, because I think in total, you showed me the page the other day, and the King videos have made like $10. Millions of views, but it's like you need hundreds of millions and billions of views at this point on YouTube to make any money.
Demonetized.
Other than obviously the Kill 'Em All one was delisted totally,
And
which
I
is
think that's basically. I think it has been, but I'm not positive. I kind of don't keep the best track of that stuff.
well, yeah. I mean, you showed it to me and it was $10. So why would you even bother keeping track of it?
Yeah, I didn't. When I need $10, I'll log in and try to withdraw it. But as of right now, I don't need the 10 quite that bad. So
I could imagine, like we talked about it last week, but like the Desperate Lovers video or even the Alpha and Omega video has a couple violent.
yeah, I do think they bury. I do think they bury or.
The algorithm.
Yeah, even though someone might be like, well, it's YouTube, why do they care about your small, tiny, shitty band? Well, because I can name about 100 other people that are way smaller than our band that are buried, deplatformed, and
Right.
demonetized.
It's
You
crazy.
only hear about the humongous ones, but there are plenty of people way less popular than us that are having the same problem.
It's pretty crazy. It's almost, I know that a lot of it is algorithmic, but I'm sure there is somebody, like a person or a team of people that are going through and hunting down videos.
Yeah. The way I understand it to be algorithmic, and it is brought to the attention of real people who make a decision.
Right.
An arbiter, if you will.
But, well, speaking of YouTube, we did just put up a new, I don't want to say video, because it's not a music video, but a new King TV.
It is a video, right? I
Yeah.
guess.
Those are pretty cool. 20. There's probably actually been more. It feels like there's been more.
I think so, but I don't really know.
What was like the inspiration? Because that kind of started in like, it was before the Roadrunner signing, right? Or was it around that same time?
Yeah, it must have been.
And it was just an idea to put more content out, or?
Yeah, just the stuff that I think we grew up liking, which was the backstage videos and just the other shit about the band that you like, I guess. Wasn't ever really nowadays it's kind of synopsized as content or whatever, but when we started doing it, that word wasn't the big buzzword that it is now.
Right.
So it was more like the things that we liked. You know, the Nine Inch Nails Closure VHS, the Slipknot Welcome to Our Neighborhood VHS, you know.
Interesting.
I had Up in Smoke Backstage VHS. Korn had and Pantera had a tour VHS. I can't remember what it was called. I just liked seeing, you know, how it was done, I guess. Like, this is what it's supposed to be. And we started doing that maybe 10 years ago or something.
It's funny that to my knowledge, bands don't even do that anymore. Even big ones. They don't put out DVDs of like, because like, I'm like a half generation behind you, so I had like a Green Day DVD that was like, followed them on their tour, had all their music videos, and had a live set performance. No band does that anymore.
Yeah.
Even the big bands.
I never really thought about it.
That used to do it, Korn and Slipknot and Nine Inch Nails, they don't put out DVDs.
I don't know.
If anything, I've seen artists will live stream a concert or something.
Maybe that's the way that's going now, I guess.
But
I'm unsure if that makes the most sense, right?
or I've occasionally seen bands put out like a live CD, but I can't think of any band that's put out a live DVD like that with a full set. And maybe it's just because these bands aren't putting on shows anymore. I was talking with Landon about this when I saw him the other day. Bands in the metal scene, other than these huge bands, don't put any effort into their stage performance. They go out with the house lights and they play the show and they leave. Like, there's no sense of theatrics. There's nothing special about a live show anymore, it seems like.
Yeah, it seems like some people only care, though. A funny story that I don't really care to dive into, but something that's relevant is these fucking morons in the UK had written an article after we had, did our show there a few years ago, which it had a bunch of elements, and live stuff, and then we did one with nothing a couple years ago at Bloodstock, and there was no production, no extra stuff, and people were writing articles like King came and played the set that they were supposed to play without all the extra stuff and all the bells and whistles and things like that. And then they had written an article about Parkway Drive headlining, saying Parkway Drive comes with all the bells and whistles to show everyone that they are a headliner worthy of the spot. And you just wonder, which is it?
It's like a confirmation bias.
Once again,
it's only
like,
cool when a band
cool because they're in there.
Right.
If they were doing it before the time, it wouldn't be cool. They'd be looked at it like a try hard, which is an annoying term that I hate because we're only trying to give fans a good show. What is wrong with that?
Right.
I can't understand how that is.
I think maybe with the resurgence of like the hardcore / DIY scene, there's this fascination with the bare bones of just like, they should just playing the music, man, like stuff like that. And
yeah.
Maybe they think that when you have the theatrics, it's trying to hide or cover up some sort of musical performance. And I say this no cap, you're one of the best live vocalists I've ever seen. And
so good that I'm constantly accused of using a track where I don't sing.
Right, and I can say that as someone that has listened to the live set with in-ear monitors and, listened to just your vocals, your raw vocals, and it's like, it's unparalleled. Sounds just like the CD.
Yeah. Which just must mean I'm using a fake track. What do they call it? What are this fucking retards call it?
Backtrack on your Milli Vanilli.
No, they call it something else in England.
Oh, they call it miming.
Oh, miming. Yeah. It's like, I didn't know I was that good.
You are.
But apparently I am. Because these fucking retards think I'm playing the CD and just acting along to it like I give that much of a fuck.
It's because most people aren't used to the bands they go to see actually being good. Like their vocalist will sit in a booth for days going line by line and then can't do it live.
Yeah, I never understood that. We have a bunch of extra shit when we play live that we obviously don't have. We have water phones and crazy shit in all of our songs, 130, 140, 150 stem songs. We also have a guy standing behind a humongous piece of gear that's by no stretch of the imagination are we trying to hide it. Right. He's on stage with us with a humongous piece of gear with these MIDI controllers and laptops and keyboards and all these other things.
It's like just because he's not like rocking out or something.
Or the strange part about it is that's always the band that we've been. We've always had that guy out there.
Yeah.
And because our songs have always had 200 stems, that we're not going to get 200 members to play them live. But the point is, if that's the case, we're probably not the band you think we are. I think we've talked about that before, though.
Do you know which song has the most unique sounds or instruments or stems or whatever?
No.
Heartbeats has got to be up there.
Yeah, Heartbeats. Got some wild stuff. They all have wild stuff though. That's what I'm saying is there's not an exception. When if I cut down and played for you a bunch of things, you would be like, what the fuck? I didn't know this was in here. There is shit in every song. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's not, you know, we don't do it 2 or 3 times on an album and then try to make a big deal about it for attention. It's every single song we try
Right.
to, you know, put all these things on here. I always say it. I don't, you know, people don't really agree or see the vision, but I always fancied us as more industrial than metal in the sense that that's what I thought we were, but
It's almost like if, you know, in a dream world or a hypothetical world, if the first tour you would have done, and I say first, not this obviously wasn't the first tour, but instead of the Slipknot tour, if it was like a 9 Inch Nails tour,
it would have been a whole different
Right.
look, right?
right?
And then people would have thought we were that band instead of this one. And yeah, it's just an association thing. There's also an education type of thing too, but I can't really pick out a song that comes to mind. They're all loaded. There's so much things that I always want to do in all these songs that they have so much stuff in them.
Does that date back to memoirs, or is it like Midwest
Yeah.
Monsters? There's
I mean, even Midwest Monsters,
has some stuff going on.
yeah, there's still keyboards, buzz saws, some synthesizers, and basic stuff. It wasn't as much because we weren't as good.
Right.
It was that simple. It wasn't not by design. It was as we go, we get better and better, and that's just how it works, you know.
Going back to the King TV, but still talking about the live performance. In that most recent King TV, you kind of touch a little on the idea of a separation in your psyche, at least, of David Gunn on stage versus David Gunn in real life.
Yeah.
Is that something that's like hard to do, or is it just happens and you're kind of aware of it, or do you actually have to, you know, flip a switch, if you will, to go into that stage mode or that real life mode? Or
It's hard to explain succinctly, I guess. Because myself at home doesn't find himself in any situations that myself on the stage would, or
right,
doesn't enjoy. I don't do any supplementary activity that would allude to what a singer of a band might enjoy. My activities are not, when I go home, you know, public speaking or recording in a studio with other bands or running a label or just things that other people maybe might do if they were me, I guess. So I never find myself in similar situations, but it's just a different environment, and I don't have any real problem with it. I talk about it in the book a little bit about, you know, being out here with the drugs and in the streets doing this, that, and the other thing, but then also volunteering at the club, the venue,
right,
where none of those worlds ever even crossed. And it's kind of still the same, but it's more like I have to force myself to go out there and do it because I don't necessarily love standing on stage and playing, you know.
But you've described it to me before as like, why would I want to go and scream as loud as I can for 45 minutes? Why would that be enjoyable?
Yeah, I can't really understand a real interesting way to answer the question, because I'm trying to identify the different parts of it. I'm not good at flipping the switch and being the ideal person, which is why I don't think I'm as enjoyed as I could be. You know what I mean? That charismatic type of front man type of guy. You know what I mean? That type of show, I guess. I'm not good at that to begin with, and I don't bother doing it. So I don't really flip a switch. It's just you have to mind your environment, I guess.
To me, it wouldn't make sense. Like, if you were, doing these songs that are not very nice songs lyrically, like, they're not about nice things, and then if you were like, how we feeling tonight? What's going on?
But that's
like,
exactly how the rest of the world operates, right? I mean, with very little exceptions. You know, if you meet the singer to Cannibal Corpse, this is a group called Cannibal Corpse.
But he's just a nice guy.
Yeah.
That's how.
So it's what?
That's how it seems to be. I mean, we've talked about that before. The black metal or the whatever, what have you, go out there and they have their crazy persona, and then they get off stage and they're just a normal ass dude.
Yeah, and it might go back to what you were saying when you said you were talking to Landon about whatever. Is it just that these normal ass dudes are getting their foot in the door because anyone can basically do it now? Is that why when you say, bands don't care anymore? Is it people don't care anymore, or is it bands don't? And that is these people that used to prioritize and put emphasis on their shows and not them being cool. Well, now that anyone can get through the door, is it just a bunch of fucking regular ass every mans?
Right.
That's basically what I see. Is when I see a group, it's like, you're not special. There's nothing cool about you. You're not talented, and you have nothing interesting to say. That's why you're like that. That's why this is like that. And that's what people get from you. It's, I always kind of try to reverse engineer it, Instead of coming to the conclusion that bands all got together in a meeting one day and decided they're not going to put on good shows anymore, you just got to assume that those people cared and these people don't. You know what I mean?
Right. It could also be a reflection of the crowd. Like, people don't really go to live shows like they used to, it seems like. So it's like, well, why put in the effort, If people don't care, if they just want to see you play your music, why?
Yeah. Because that's why we had tried it on that last festival when they had so much to say about a show and production and things. It's like, all right, well, we're going to do nothing. We went so low. We actually had a friend just standing out there with a MacBook in his hand, right on the drum riser. And that was part of it. It was like, we're not even going to give this guy a stand, a case.
Right.
It's going to be sitting right here on the drums. So every time you look at the drum, you see a guy with a laptop behind him, you know what I mean, doing this programming. And they wrote about it and said it was dope. It could coincide again with the money balloon getting popped with the downloading,
Right.
Used to be a lot more money in music, so there was a lot more throwaway money to go towards shows and things, and now that there's not, you see I don't know if you've noticed, but the ticket price inflation is just insane.
I don't even go to shows that are at big venues because a
theater band, playing 6, 8, 1,000 cap room, it'll be $75.
Right.
You're just wondering why. And you realize, oh, I know why. But kind of got off track there a little bit. To answer your question about the episode, it's difficult, I guess. I'm constantly trying to step outside of myself and check myself and to who, because you have to some extent when you're out here living in the world, and some people say from that side of the music thing come up to you and, you know, might recognize or whatever,
Yeah.
you have to be that guy.
Right.
To some extent anyway. You can't act like you don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
So you have to be someone. And if you were your real self, you would just break their jaw if they approached you. But you can't, there's no need to do that really, you know. So you find yourself trying to figure out what the balance is. And also who, I think we talked about this before in the past about finding or being what side, you know. What side do you want to be? What are you trying to show people? For example, I'll talk about girls or whatever in some songs, ones that I had good relationships with, and then in some Yavid songs I talk about ones that I had some not so good ones with, right? In a certain way, and people are like, wait, what? You know, I was into this one, say like Eyes or something, or Devil Don't Cry, but this side O one or whatever it may be, it's just like, wait, who's this? It's like, yeah, they exist. You know what I mean?
Right.
The way you don't talk about every one the same. It's just like that in situations. Or facets of you, you know, different sides, which is basically what every song is, you know, is a different side, and you just gotta. It's hard to explain to the person that no side is bigger or more important than any other.
When you write a song, do you kind of take a side and like make that side the whole? You kind of blow it up and
Yeah.
Okay.
You magnify it,
Right.
and basically so you examine obviously other points of view and stuff like that. But I don't do that too much though. I don't play devil's advocate or anything. I just talk about shit that I really do. So when, for example, just one that came to mind, you know, another one is violence. You know, the violence in State of Nature is a lot different than the violence in Kill 'Em All. But in the tangible world, you know, as far as physical things, outside of ideas like violence, girls is an example. I think they're talked about in so many different ways in so many different songs because there's so many different kinds.
Right.
So many different situations and people that you were. You know, sometimes I might be talking about someone I knew when I was 13.
Right.
So when someone, you know, is listening, maybe they're not thinking about that or knowing that, but sometimes I'm talking about someone I knew when I was 25. That's a different scenario. And that's a different, it's all true, but it's, it could be seen, I guess, if you view me in 2D, you could see them as contradictory. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you don't.
You're either this or that, or you're black or white, or whatever you want to describe it as. Because of that, because of, like you've said, it exists in so many different planes or what have you. Is it ever, when you perform the song, does it ever put you back in that headspace, or either of when you wrote it or when you recorded it, or just the time period?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it does. Not every time. Sometimes I check out and I'm not even paying attention when we're playing.
It's just on autopilot.
Yeah.
I do remember one show, I was going through the photos from the show, and you said, look, my eyes are closed in every single picture.
Yeah. Sometimes I just don't want to be there. Sometimes I know I'm supposed to be in shit for the people, but some days it's not my day. So sometimes it does. Sometimes it does nothing, but...
Are there songs that are, like, harder for you to perform, not, like, vocally, but just emotionally, lyrically?
Yeah. And parts too. Parts of songs that aren't necessarily hard. A part will just jump out and grab you. Like the trauma model. Trauma model is rough. It's just it's just a whole rough song.
And if you're kind of able to step outside yourself, that's kind of cool from a spectator's perspective, right? Like if you go to see an artist and you just really see them suffering, I guess it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's something. Maybe it's better than nothing. There are parts that kind of, make me upset, or, little points I feel adamant about, or little flashbacks, More so when I listen to the songs. Playing live already has me in an uncomfortable position to where
Right.
it's kind of like, we can't really get into that yet. But sometimes a song will connect in that way, you know what I mean? Here and there. It's strange. It makes me think of a point. It's not necessarily a smooth segue, but I was thinking of something the other day, and it was kind of about myself.
Okay.
Because I was examining. We had a rugby game, and I was watching people watch the tape of the game.
Okay.
And I was trying to make an observation about myself first, because I always try to do that. That way I'm not guilty when I start making observations on other people. But I came up with this idea that I just wrote it down. It said something like, people that can't take criticism never criticize themselves.
Well, yeah, how could you? Right?
It didn't seem so obvious to me when I think about it, though. It seems obvious when I say it out loud.
Right.
You're like, oh yeah, of course not, because they're not used to taking it. But kind of even say it the other way. Then I started extrapolating into other ways where people who I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. Another one would be those, which I guess this is kind of like criticism, but people who can't be laughed at, can't laugh at themselves as well.
Okay.
Which is the same thing as criticism, but on one sense it seems obvious because you aren't used to taking it from yourself. So when someone else does it, you're really, ooh, fuck, put off or upset or whatever it may be. But on the inverse, if you are used to criticizing yourself, it seems to be like only good. And then I was thinking, when we were watching the tape, because you always hear about, the pros watch tapes of themselves and they come up with that, but they don't really, because you could be watching the tape as not a constructive method for betterment. You could be watching it as a narcissist.
Yeah, I've heard that idea before where if you're only watching yourself, if you're trying to, watch tape of yourself and use it to better yourself, but you're only watching yourself win, you'll never get better. Like if you were to only watch your rugby games where you, scored a bunch and played good defense and whatever, but you were playing a bad team or something, you're not going to learn anything.
Or even if you're only watching yourself.
Right.
I just thought, and maybe I always knew this and maybe it wasn't profound, but when I was thinking about it, I was like, there's something to be said about someone that can't handle criticism. And I think the foremost thing to be said is they must never criticize themselves.
If they can't take it from someone else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Must never truly criticize themselves. So where I spun that out from, what I spun it out from was, well, think of low self-esteem. People criticize themselves all the time. I do it as well. But then you realize it's not criticism. It's also vain ego, poor me, attention.
It's just feeling
stimulus,
bad for yourself. Or...
Yeah, which is not criticism. So I thought it was something worth thinking about whenever you come across someone who is put off by criticism. Just take that as a hint that, or maybe just a thought experiment to start thinking to yourself, in this person's life, do they ever criticize themselves? Because they sure as fuck can't take one from me. And it doesn't seem to be that they do. I couldn't figure out, and this was just a daydream while we were watching, you know.
What made you think of it? Was someone like being critical of watching the tape? They were saying like, oh, you should have been doing this or that, or...
Yeah, when people would say, hey, what about this? Like, they just stopped. And then they had something to say about everyone else, or then they had some stupid excuse or whatever it was. But it goes for anyone that I'm around as well. I noticed the ones that can't take it usually are the ones that are coasting on autopilot, kind of taking the paths of least resistance. But
they kind of just have blockers up to the world.
Yeah. Even if at the root of what we're talking about, it comes down to unawareness, you know. To me, that's all that criticism is, although even it can be wrong as well, but all that it is when someone brings something up is you know, something that you haven't already brought up to yourself. But it just comes up when we were watching tapes, I guess. It was a scenario where someone said, you should this, that, or why didn't you do this, that, and it's because of this, because he done, you know, or, you know, whether it be blaming or whether it be turning it on someone else or making up an excuse or whatever.
They just can't take the criticism.
Yeah. Then when you learn about their life, you're like, oh, of course.
It makes sense.
This makes perfect sense. I don't know what that had to do with anything, but...
You said it was a bad segue, so we'll just roll with it. And unless you have anything else you want to add, I might just have one last thing to say.
What's that?
How wild was last night?